This is Andrew from CollectionDX.com taking a look at Arcadia's 1/60th scale Perfect Transformation VF0D Phoenix Shin Kudo version. So it's been about almost a decade after Yamato first started making Macross Zero toys, and as many of us know, Yamato went away under strange circumstances and came back as Arcadia. And the first thing I do want to emphasize with this toy, while it is another VF0 figure from, again, the guys who made the originals, this is in fact all new tooling. It's just that the VF0 as a design was originally a CG model, so there's not a whole lot of room for interpretation. So if this thing looks very familiar, trust me, it feels very familiar too. So anyway, the VF0D, here it is, and it's big. It's actually like about a foot long and almost as wide as well. It has its unique delta wing design and also a whole bunch of canards on it. Most notably these ones here that are attached to the intake area. These can actually get taken off pretty easily and they just slot back in just as easily. It's actually handy to take those off when you're transforming it. And like the old VF0 toys, it does still feature removable intake covers. I'll put those back on later. It has the working air brake in the back. It has an opening cockpit, and this thing will actually come off if you pull it too much. But it goes back in easily enough. And inside you have little Shin Kudo and Edgar Lascelles. And one cool thing is that they both have their unique helmet designs. So let me zoom in on it there. So you can kind of see Shin has his little lightning bolt and Edgar actually does have little hearts on his helmet there. So that's a nice touch. And another cool thing is, I'll just spin this around real quick. And I probably should have kept that zoom in. But they actually do have tampo printed displays on their consoles here inside the cockpit. That is really cool. I think that really adds just that extra bit of quality to the figure. And I gotta say, it feels pretty good in the hands. I mean, it is a VF0 toy. I can't deny that it has that just same overall aesthetic and engineering in it. But they have redone a lot of things, so there's actually more die-cast in it, which kind of helps the weight a bit. Other things to note about it, you still got the little antenna in the front there, and they give you two of these things in case you lose one or break one. For the transformation, I'll just be taking that off. And for underwing stores, you've got this big old AMRAAM missile, which actually attaches, just kind of slots in there, and unfortunately it doesn't have a middle fin right here because of the way it attaches, although it still looks pretty good on the outboard pylon there. And you also have a pair of big old micro missile launchers, the ones seen in the OVA. And a little fun bit of trivia here. People watching Macross Frontier might have noticed that Satellite totally reused the same missiles from Macross Zero. So these are from Bandai's VF-171 accessory pack. So yeah, so that's kind of funny. They did do a lot to kind of differentiate these designs from the Macross Frontier ones. So not a whole lot else I can say about fighter mode. It's very nice. It's very well put together, and everything just very tabs together nice and tightly. It rolls very well on its landing gear. Landing gear is still kind of hard to get out, so that hasn't changed. But it does look good. It's die-cast, there's rubber tires and all that, and this thing is pretty gorgeous. It's just it's a stunning design in and of itself, and seeing it done in a big 1 foot long toy just kind of really makes this a centerpiece of any collection. As far as the color goes, I know there's been a little bit of a hubbub about that. to the point where Hidetaka Tenjin, the premier Macross Valkyrie artist, and also the guy who designed all the textures used on the models in Macross Zero, weighed in on it as well. I think the color, I actually really like the color. It's a very nice deep blue. I think the thing with it is that this represents more a factory fresh VF0D, and also one that isn't in a world where everything looks like model kit box art, because that's actually what they were going for with Macross Zero. But if you've made up your mind about the color, I'm probably not going to convince you. So we're going to take a look at some of the other things you can do with it in fighter mode. So in addition to what is tempographed on the airplane already, Archaea did include a full set of stickers so you can customize it even more. These are their typical clear type sticky decals, and if you've used any of their toys before, then you know what these are like. And also, they have, this thing comes with a whole bunch of stand adapters for use with their modern Valkyrie stand, not the old Do You Remember Love style one, so it actually has a kind of hexagon-shaped connector. Interesting thing about the new display stand is that it's actually just a remolded version of the display stand that came with the SB51. So yeah, if you ever had one of those toys, you probably remember this thing. I am not actually going to show you this with being used with the VF0D, because when I tried to put this thing on, it stayed on the toy with a death grip, and it took me a while to get it back off. So I recommend not using this thing, because it just seems like it's going to hurt the toy in the long run, and also I don't think you can actually have this and the gun pod on at the same time. I didn't actually show that in the instructions, so yeah. If this is one thing that is kind of a failure for the toy, it's this dumb thing, but that's not the toy itself, just an accessory, because all it does is actually, it's supposed to just clip around a pair of slots right here, and this is, you can kind of see how the stuff is remolded on this newer VF0, because these are here right there for the stand adapter. So yeah, it goes on there, but it's so tight that you can't get it off again easily. So I'm going to just skip that, and let's move on to Garowalk mode. So in going into Garowalk mode, I'm going to admit up front that I have cheated and done a couple of things off camera. For one thing, I put all the landing gear down, or in, and then extended the ankles outwards, because this figure doesn't have so much of a case of quality control as it is quality out of control. A bunch of joints on this toy are incredibly tight. I'm guessing that the factory workers waited the minimum amount of time to assemble these things and then put them in the box, where temperature took its toll and tolerances were stretched to the limit. Again, nothing's broken, it's just that this thing is difficult to transform to the point where I jammed my thumb into this little area between the foot and the leg, and now my thumb is kind of numb. And that rhymes. Also, the tail fins, they are on the legs, and they come out on a sliding joint, which was also really tight. I used a little thing to wedge in there. Unfortunately, I didn't know that's how it worked at first, so a tiny little tip here got damaged the first time I transformed it. Anyway, on to the show, and also I'm going to cheat by popping those things off. Okay, so you just pull out the wings. There's also the same kind of tab setup where the legs tab into the backpack here. So that's all like that. There's a tab between the body and the top of the shin. Not the shin in the cockpit, the shin on the plane. And you do have the whole Garowalk joint. This has been changed, though. This is no longer just that little accordion joint. It is a full-on die-cast assembly in here. So that's one place where this differs from the original VF0 toys. Similarly, I'm going to do this on the other side. Again, this thing is like built like a tank that you're not meant to actually transform. Do that, and I'm just going to flip out the feet here. The feet, and they do have like the full burner detail underneath. With the feet and the whole ankle assembly, it's like Yamato's VF19 toys and Arcadia's YF19 toy, where you have a little hinge in there with a die-cast ball joint that goes into another die-cast assembly. These feel very tight. The whole ball itself is actually a lot bigger than on those YF19 toys, so they still feel tight, even though I've been like wrestling this thing to get it to transform. So time will tell how everything holds up, but you know, it seems pretty good so far. And so with the tail fins, they just flip around to the insides of the legs. And as we go to this side, all this is again pretty familiar if you had the old VF-Zero toys. You just kind of like pull these things out, and eventually they work their way around. And just kind of make sure you clear the bottom here. You just kind of undo the whole intake assembly to get some room. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. So this is that whole like pioneering VF1, VF0 transformation system that they've been using to this day. Yeah, and this thing comes loose, but you can just pop it back together easily enough. Okay, and then you just take the whole backpack and then you know, do that thing where you move some hinges around. And this is kind of tight right here though. So yeah, but it does go up in place, and then you can lift up the arrestor hook, which unfortunately you can't actually use that in fighter mode when the gun pod is attached because it blocks it. So that's a design flaw with the design itself, not really the toy. And then there's that little like switch thingy that you use to help you bring out the little burners in the back. I think I'll do that off screen as well. But yeah, you guys know Valkyrie toys, and you know, like pop out his hands a little bit. I don't have to like explain everything about Valkyrie toys, do I? I've done like 30 of these reviews maybe. But yeah, you just pull these out. The thing has the semi-resist hands, and poor Shin is doing the splits. Anyway, let me pause this and come back to it. Alright, after a little fixing, here we have the VF-Zero-D Phoenix in Airwalk mode. And despite my griping from how much effort it takes, it looks really gorgeous in Airwalk mode. This is probably its best mode, because it just works so well with the whole birdwalker aesthetic and the big old wings in the back there. Just a note on these, the reason I take them off is because you kind of have to flip them down. They're on a little double hinge here before you move the arm out, and you know, you bump into them as you're transforming it, but it's just easier to just do that and just take them off, flip them down, and then put them back in place. That's just, again, for my own sanity. But yeah, it's got the standard like the Airwalk joint. You know, it's got the swivel right at the knee, so you can get that A stance. The ankles, they have again the ball joint, the swivel setup, so it's kind of how you get the feet tilted inward, and it does have actually the same hands that the original VF-Zero toy had, which is kind of weird because it still has like that crazy like offset pinky that's disconnected from the other two fingers. But yeah, it does feel a little bit more solid. Again, everything on this toy just feels super solid. But it does still hold the gun. There's even actually an extra slot and tab system where you got a slot in the gun pod handle. You can see right here, it goes into a tab in the palm. And this whole thing, it's just like it used to be. It collapses inwards, the handle goes down a little bit, and now it's on the arm. Yeah, so that's the Airwalk mode. Looks really good, and again, all the stuff in the back was redone with die-cast metal. So another part that's also been redone in die-cast metal, before I forget, is this entire arm assembly for the bicep. This is all die-cast metal now. so it's probably not going to break like the way the old ones did. I still have those Shapeways parts available, and I'll probably link it somewhere in this review. But yeah, anyway, so this is like the whole arm system here, and it's all very strong, and even this thing on the inside is die-cast metal now. So they saw the problem and they just threw money at it, and it seems to be fixed. Alright, so let's take a good look at this guy on his stand adapter, and I promise it'll work this time. Hey, we're up here right now. Anyway, so the stand adapter for the VF0D in Gearwalk mode is this thing. All it does is it clamps around the die-cast swing bar on the underside. And you know what's kind of a weird thing about the whole VF0 is it actually had swing bars, like actual like Takatoku style swing bars in the anime itself, but for some reason this guy still uses they actually just kept the whole hidden swing bar thing from like the 148 VF1 toys, and the new 160s as well, so yeah, anyway. So here you go, we got the VF0D up on the stand. Again, the new Yamato stands are just a remolded version of the old SV51/YF21 stand, so yeah, this thing works. It stays up there, and the adapter goes in and out pretty easily. So yeah, it looks good up here, and it's not going anywhere other than the fact that my backdrop is uneven. But anyway, so let's continue on into Bataroid mode, which is the main event. Alright, we're going on to Bataroid mode, and I'm cheating again. That should be the subtitle for this episode. Andrew's a dirty cheater. Because I straightened out the Gearwalk joints. Because again, quality is out of control, and they're really hard to retract. So, what we're going to do, again, not that dissimilar from the old toys, is when we move the head out of the way, and there's a pair of little itty-bitty things here that come out, and sometimes totally pop off when I'm moving them. And those are just like little extra cowlings for the head. So with the head laser itself, it's actually on a double joint, because normally when it rests against the forehead, it's slightly at an angle, but you can also push it so that it's like this, so that it can actually point all the way forward right there. And in doing that, we push the whole back plate out again, and not too dissimilar from the old toys, and rotate, and just kind of bring the head back around like this, because it's all going to thread through as we transform it. This whole thing starts to come apart as you wiggle it, and also the joints in the chest plate area are also super tight. So they've gotten a little bit looser as I've done this, but yeah, this is very much a toy where they're starting with everything being as tight as possible. Also disengage the heat shield there. Anyway, so this toy is like starting as tight as it possibly can be, so that it'll loosen up in like maybe 5 years. Okay, now with the heat shield, the canopy cover, whatever here, this actually pulls out on a little die-cast track in there, so that it can be long enough to deal with the whole double cockpit. So you can retract the whole nose cone area and start to work things out. In fact, I forgot about something. You're supposed to have the head going the other way as you're doing this. So, yeah. Let me figure this out here. Okay, there we go. So then you do that, and then you just start to bring the whole thing together. There's also the familiar little door system on the nose cone. You just pop this up, and this will all come together like it did almost a decade ago. So This is all going to lock in place in the back here. This is going to pop like that in here, and you just take the back plate and push it, work it past the little nubs in the front there so you can bring the backpack as close as possible to the back itself, and then straighten out his feet. Bring the wings down in typical Valkyrie fashion, and they kind of come. You also see that these move. I'm doing that all this time, and they come close enough so that these parts are almost touching. So anyway, can retract this part. One thing that's like you can kind of see it's been difficult with the VF0D is the big wings and all the little winglets and canards everywhere. Everything just kind of bumps into each other, and yeah, that can make it a little difficult to handle. Anyway, he's in Bataroid mode now, and I'm just gonna clean him up, and we'll take a look at Bataroid mode a little more. So here is the VF0D in Bataroid mode, looking big and impressive. And it should, because it's like a foot tall. Again, it's not really that much different than the old toy. It's just that everything that did break on the original has been re-engineered so it wouldn't on this one. And I know I mentioned before we have these arm joints where this is all die-cast in here. You can also pull this out, and that's a mean click right there. And on both of these sides, you can pull it out like that. And now the elbow can actually like go up so far he can touch his own shoulder. So that's kind of cool that they decided to not only improve the durability, but to also give it some more articulation. These are way tighter than they ever were on the old toys. You know, he's got the full, like, you can pull these out because of the way the hinge works, and then he's got the full swivel right here. The head itself, it moves at both the base of the neck, and there's actually a ball joint at the top, so it actually does have a side-to-side, a little bit of side-to-side motion as well. And like before I said, there actually was the whole like double joint system. With the head laser, you can see there's actually like an extra joint here, so that it can be pointed forward a bit more. Basically like that. So that's how that works, and then you just sort of like pick this thing up again and then push the extra joint back in there, and now it's like where it needs to be. Okay. Now with the legs, they improved the hips a little bit. You can actually, and there's a problem with this thing, is it's got so much stuff on it, it's hard to reach in. So the hips actually pull out, so that now you have like all this range of motion. It does make them like a little bit looser, so I prefer to just like leave them inside. And also you can forget to do that when you're transferring back to fighter mode and you're wondering, it's like, oh, well, it's just not locking in place. Oh, it's because the hips are too far out one way. So, you know, you still got the whole, like, you use the Garwalk joint to give it some range of motion because of just how this always hits right there. But that's actually true to the show, so we can do that confidently. You can pull this thing out. It does have the whole moving knee cap assembly, and this whole thing moves as well. And as you saw before, it had the ball jointed feet, so you know, it's not a whole lot this guy can't do given his design. One thing that they've been touting on their website, or Yamato's Arcadia's website, jeez, is this guy can actually like balance with his foot, just touching the ground like on the front there. And yeah, you know, he's got his articulation. He's about as good as he used to be. You know, the original VF-Zero toys. Just even with a couple of improvements. So if you know your modern Valkyrie toys, you know what to expect. And also, I should also mention this. They do show that you can if you want, and they showed this on the old VF-Zero toys, keep this little antenna like attached in the back here in Battoroid mode, but that's just cording disaster. I mean, it's easy enough to just leave it off entirely. It's not that important, and it's covered up in Battoroid mode, so you're not going to see it. The only thing with these wings that they didn't quite get right is there's not really a gap here in the show, but there's a little bit of cheating in the show, even though it's CG, because the wings kind of move up a little bit to close the gap in the back, but it's not too bad on the actual toy. It's cool enough that it's actually here, a VF-Zero-D toy, and it looks good and feels maybe too good. But anyway, so I'm just going to do a couple comparisons and give you my final thoughts on this thing. And also I should show you that stand thing, shouldn't I? Okay, we're back up here in the air again, so I can show you how to put this guy up on a stand, because it's a little tricky, just because the stand adapter here is this terrifying looking cup that's actually molded to fit the nose cone that he has for a crotch. So you just kind of like shove this thing up in here, and it helps if you have these hips pulled out a bit, so just because it's actually kind of tight in there. Yeah. Anyway, I hope I'm giving you all like a good idea of how it is to handle this thing. Although I am, bent over a camera right now, so I don't have the best vantage point for playing with toys. There we go. Yeah. So this thing, it just kind of clips in to both the ankle or the hip joints in there, and also on the back of the swing bar. So now he's like all ready to get popped up on a stand. So right here, stick it like just like that, and he's on the stand. This thing is pretty solid. I wouldn't try making it like go all the way forward, but he will stay up there in the air on this stand well enough, and he'll pose as well as he can with his big old wings in the way. But yeah, anyway, it is cool that I can actually have the VF-Zero-D from Macross Zero on another Macross Zero accessory that's from almost 10 years ago. But, that's a cool thing about Legacy support. Anyway, now I'm actually going to get into the end of this review. So at the end of this review, let's do a couple of quick comparisons. And I would be remiss not to bring out old Rickety Roy here. This is the VF-Zero-D from the Ghost set that I reviewed way back now, when my camera was kind of shitty and terrible. And it's really hard to tell that these are any different, other than, of course, the parts that make this a VF-Zero-D. But it's kind of hard to tell on like camera here, but a lot of the panel lines, especially like along the leg here, are a lot deeper and bigger. Whereas on this, they're much finer, and also this does not actually magnet onto the VF-Zero-D, so I don't know if it just doesn't have the parts for that, like a little magnet inside, or what's going on there. And if you had one of these that was really good, it wasn't a bad toy. It's actually pretty fun for what it is. And so the VF-Zero-D, takes all that and makes it better. It's more or less like a 1.5 version of this. But again, this is an all-new toy. It's just that, VF-Zero-D or VF-Zero, any of them, they're CG models. They're all going to look about the same. There's not much you can do there. And, honestly, as far as recommending this toy, I don't think there's many people out there who are on the fence about it. I think if you really wanted it, you're going to get it. If you have any misgivings about it, like the colors or, the fact that it's covered in all these little winglets you got to be careful about, lots of little pointy ends that you can damage, I think you're probably not going to swallow the 36,800 yen price tag on this toy. Now, talking about price for a little bit, it's interesting that because of the exchange rate, I paid less for this toy than I did for my VF4, which I reviewed, again, a couple years ago. Because that was at a time when the yen was like, we had like 75 yen to the dollar. Right now it's hovering around like 115, 120, so this guy ended up being about $270 plus shipping. So, again, if you really want a VF0D toy and you see like everything you see here, you're probably going to want it. You're going to want this as a centerpiece in your collection. It's difficult to play with. Again, the quality is out of control. But it is a fantastic looking piece. It's solid. The construction is really good. And it's not perfect, and I don't think any toy is, no matter how much it costs. That's just a fact of toys. It's still a very... It's kind of the culmination of everything that Yamato had wanted to do with the Macross Zero line. And interesting enough, they did show off they're making a new VF0S and VF0A, and it's going to be based on this mold. So all the die-cast parts, all the improvements are going to be in the new version of this. So that's how it works. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to get at least one of those, and I'm pretty sure this will be that taking this and making it this version makes it a lot easier to handle because it is a much more compact design compared to the VF0D. And before I sign off, I just want to have a little fun here. And so here is the VF0D. Next to his friend, the YF30 Chronos. And this is for people who played the Macross 30 video game, because you start the game with a VF0D and you end it with the YF30 Chronos. So this is the whole fictional history of Valkyries up to this point in toy form. So yeah, they look good together, and as a fan of the game, as a fan of Macross Zero, and all of Macross in general, I was happy to get this toy. I just wish it didn't hurt me quite as much playing with it. So anyway, this has been Andrew of CollectionDX.com, signing off.